So, how did you come into this project, and at what point was it at when you came on as producer?
I was at Rocket Science. I was probably employee number 12. So I was there through the whole journey. Used, I think, the first game they released called Lodestar, The Legend of Tully Bodine. Uh, and and basically, I was there at the launch of the game, to the complete inception of the idea, and then how that got changed. The company. By the time we went to Obsidian, to making Obsidian, the the adventure game model had was faltering for Rocket Science because its thing was Hollywood meets Silicon Valley, and we put a lot of energy and time into the Hollywood side, as in the look of the game, and the game designers who were very experienced, like, hey guys, you're putting so much energy into the look of the game, and you're making me make a really simple game. So these games are going to fail, which they turned out to fit. Like, they look great, but the gameplay was more like checkers or instead of chess. So by the time they were exploring something like Rocket for Obsidian, they were like, what kind of game can we do that actually takes advantage of the Hollywood side of our company here that was at ILM and produced great animation for recent movies. And it was decided that a Myst-like game, uh, which focused on look and feel, would be a great place to put our energy because it could take advantage of the great visuals the company could make. So that's what I think led to, like, hey, let's do a game like this, because we weren't making it on the gameplay games that really were just ended up being loops, and the game designers are going like, wait, I proposed a whole thing, but it takes so much time for you guys to make every scene look at the as beautiful as we want it to look, that now the game scaled down. So this is an attempt to go in another direction.
Okay. So, how did the idea for Obsidian, like the story and everything, start to kind of form? And how did it's a pretty complex story. There's a lot there, and it's super
Yeah,
rich with the detail and everything. It seems like a lot of world building was done that I think you don't even the game tells more than it shows sometimes. Then you see the effects of those things, and it
right.
doesn't always just shove everything in your face. It's cool how if you go to really dig into it, there's a lot there.
Right. So we had two people at the company. Mark Sullivan, who is a fabulous matte painter for ILM and other companies, doing beautiful digital and traditional painting and designing beautiful things. And then he had a friend and partner who has since passed away, named Rich Cohn. And the two of them were at Rocket Science, and I think starting to get a little down about how the company was doing, and how the games were being received. So they kind of went off and made, in their spare time, a bunch of artwork and characters uh, that are featured in the game, but they weren't game players. They were not gamers. So they came back going, hey, we've got an idea for a game. And they proposed all this great art, and people got super enthusiastic. And then when they had to pitch what the game was, it felt thin. It was really, they were just telling a story like, well, where's the game? And they didn't really know. And we were having a meeting with the team, and there was another employee at Rocket Science named Adam Wolf, who had just joined the company, just graduated from Harvard, wanted to come out, wanted to start a career in Silicon Valley. Although this is pre even naming it Silicon Valley. This is 94, maybe 93. He comes out, and he, for other reasons, we worked in a very, we were on the advent of the no walls. The team works in a big room. Uh, and so he was doing something else, maybe some IT, listening to the conversation that we were having with Mark and Rich. And afterwards, he finds me and says, Matt, I overheard that conversation. I can design a great game around that artwork. I've got some ideas. And then there was somebody else associated with the company, a guy named Scott Kim, who was a puzzle designer and also did these inversions where he wrote in ways that you could turn the words upside down and read it again. I mean, he was a visual designer. And then there was another Hollywood writer, I will call, named Howard Kushner, So the three of them were at the company, maybe advising on other things and working on other things. And Adam basically wrangled the team and came up with, started just proposing a game. And I will note that on the plot side, the whole AI thing has turned out to be extremely prescient. The whole sport of the game is right now hitting both the good side of AI, saving the world, and the dark side of AI, maybe deciding to get rid of everybody to save the planet. So as I was reminding myself of what the plot of the game was today, I was like, wow, we were kind of on top of it. So Adam basically came in and said, let me design the game. And we gave him a chance and he did a great job. And, we were looking at the MIST model and seeing that you can take time with things and some of the puzzles, he went around different kinds of puzzles. Some were head scratchers where you had to do a lot of things and some were easier to do. But basically we thought between the world you could explore that was so beautiful and the animations and characters we could make with the interest in the puzzles that he had, we thought we had a run at it. And I think the company was feeling like this is our chance to do something that hits our wheelhouse in terms of the skills in the building. So that's how it got launched.
Okay. So what can you tell me about what were your specific duties as producer on this game?
Well, first of all, I can say in general, I produce now video and all kinds of things. One thing it was at a game company, you've got two different groups, the people making the art and the people programming the game, the engineers. And oftentimes they miss each other. They don't talk the same language and sometimes they aren't even interested in hearing each other. So one of my jobs was make it so we could all hear what he want. Everybody felt heard. So we were working with a software called Metropolis, which is from a company named M Factory that's now gone under. But there were a lot of I'll just note at the time, a lot of platforms were coming and going. And so we went for computers thinking those aren't going to go away. PC and Mac are around as opposed to like if you make it for Saturn or something else, like, oh, you finish a game and then whoop, there's no audience. So my job it was multifaceted. It was keep track of the budget and the schedule. And that's tough because everybody wants more time. Engineers want more time and artists want more time. What's the phrase? Great is the enemy of good enough. And yet we wanted it to be great. So one of my jobs was to surf the two teams, make sure they hear each other. And so everybody feels met in terms of, I got some time to engineer this, and the other artists I have some time to make this look great. So keep that communication going. Let the people up above me know that we're making progress and throw things out for them to see as we're moving along. So there's some confidence in the team. And there's, it was, I think, a 2-year project. So there's recruiting people came and went. So there's also keeping the individual artists happy and finding new ones when people had to leave to pursue opportunities. So it was a multifaceted gig, as producing often is. One eye on the creative and one side on the technical. There's more eyes here, but the technical, the creative, the financial, and the schedule.
So speaking of the financial side, I read that the budget for the game wound up being around $4 million. Do you know if that was accurate? And if so, like, what was the average budget for a game like this, for a CD-ROM game?
Well, first of all, we were following MIST, and I don't really know what their budget was. I don't know how much they took a lot of time and it was a labor of love versus how much they just hired a team like they probably did for the sequel because they felt more time was needed to make it. I don't want to say I recall the budget being higher, the end budget for Obsidian being higher than 4 million. But I can't.
That's
I don't
fair.
know. Yeah.
What can you tell me about working with Thomas Dolby and the composers at Headspace for this project? Like, how did they come on board? I read that they were involved in some of the meetings for the game and kind of collaborated early on. And I was really struck by how the music works in the game, like different tones kind of let you know you're on the right path. And there's a lot of like musical cues, that repeating themes that it gives the game a lot of depth. The soundtrack and the score really work really well. And so I'm just curious if you can give me any insight on that.
Well, Thomas had a company at the time called Headspace, and he was interested in, first of all, Thomas Dolby. I'm trying to think of someone. Oh, like he was always on cutting edge of not just. Oh, I was thinking of Todd Rundgren as well. Two rock people who are interested in multimedia and interactivity and seeing where technology was going to go. So I think Thomas was looking for a game to showcase what Headspace technology could do. And rather than just playing a soundtrack, they wanted it to be, as you noticed, thankfully, they wanted it to be interactive so the music could change as your progress in the game did or did not move forward. So they were looking for a showcase for that. And the other people on his team, another guy named Blake Lay, who is a composer who's worked on a bunch of television. I should just say, I need to step back and say several people that worked on this game went on to do very interesting stuff in movies and TV.
Yes, I am noting that in this video. I mean, yeah, lots of, it's a jumping off point for a lot of different people.
Yeah, so they were hoping, had Obsidian been successful, that it would have been the showcase for Headspace technology. And so that was the reason they got involved. I have a feeling, looking back, that there was probably frustration on how long it took to make the game. Even though I know Thomas, probably spends a lot of time on albums when he wants to make them and doesn't rush through them. I think at some point, he was a great guy, but I have nothing bad to say about Thomas, except that it might have been towards the end, he let his team lead instead of him himself, because he had to go on to other things. But it was at his office, always him getting involved and giving his feedback. So we worked with two or three people at his company, and just as the game evolved, we gave them sections. Oh, they were also working with M Factory. So, so we worked together to make the music evolve with the game, both within the final game, but also as we produced it, their music evolved as we gave them different sections and the different vibes. We had to walk them through the game so they'd see. They didn't have the time to play the game to learn where it was go. So we had to have them come over and show them all the paths and what we would need music for, which they were great at.
Wow. Okay, that's very interesting. Another thing I want to ask about, another collaborator, I saw that was it Rocky Morton did a TV spot for the game. Were you involved in the marketing aspect of this at all? And do you know like how that came together?
I don't remember how we got involved, but I know that I was around for all the different promotions we did for the whole. I mean, actually, I got involved in the company as a video producer. I didn't really know interactive when I started in '93. I learned a lot in the next year. And so I was involved in a lot of the promo. We did all kinds of stuff to try and make the company get some attention by doing unusual ads and things.
Yeah, the ads are very interesting.
Yeah. Yeah, of course. I will note there were always arguments about, I wish we had watched that, or I'd looked up I remember there were always arguments about should we focus actual imagery from the game, or should we do something more metaphorical? I believe the Rocky thing was more metaphorical.
For sure, yeah.
It was something cracking, maybe? Person?
It was a person frying an egg, and sort of as they're doing that, there's, all these intense shots, but the person falls over, and then as if like an eggshell was shattering, they shatter, and it's a really stunning effect.
Yeah, no, actually, I remember liking it, but I will note it was controversial within the company. Like, is this the way? A, what it costs, and B, we have a beautiful game. Why are we showing an egg and a guy breaking instead of the beautiful game?
Right.
And it was like, well, how do we get attention?
Yeah.
How do we get attention? Let's do something stunning. So that was its own kettle of fish.
Yeah, that makes sense. I mean, with a game like this, I mean, even, so I just replayed it a few days ago and thinking about it and looking at the marketing, it's like so much of the experience for me was the discovery and kind of going through areas and seeing things for the first time. So, I'm assuming that was kind of intentional to this unfolding universe as you go deeper and deeper into it. You don't want to give away too much of that, but also how do you say, hey, you're in for a crazy mystery and it's,
Right. Right. And I guess we chose to go with a metaphorical
right.
mystery rather than trying to show you the mystery in the game.
Yeah, that makes
Yeah.
sense. So another question I have here, if there was anything you could change about the game, do you have anything that you kind of hoped to have done but couldn't or had to leave out for just due to constraints?
You know, I'm going to go with no right now. Because it's been so long. It's been so long. I don't recall. I mean, given the time and money we were given, uh, I would imagine that the game designers, Adam might think, hey, there are things I wanted to include, but I couldn't. But we tried to meet everybody with what they wanted to do. So I don't think so.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, those are like the main questions I had, but I'm also curious, like, what sort of, insights or anecdotes or anything do you want to share about this game? So, I mean, if right now, I'll say for context, in researching the game, it's a beloved game. People love this game. Biggest complaint is that it's been difficult for people to play it in recent years. So, so this will be, people are able to come into this for the first time, a lot of people. And it, I just played the new port. It runs super smooth. It's nice to not have to do the disc changing or anything and just have it be a, really nice, smooth experience. So,
Well, funny you should mention
giving new players, some info.
I would say this: the disc changing was one thing. When I remembered the game being 5 discs, and people complained that we're sort of taken out of the experience to switch disc multiple times. One thing I'm looking forward to in this version is no disc changing. You just mentioned that, but that was a big thing. I mean, it was complicated in a lot of ways to do a 5 disc game. It was just the packaging, even the cost of producing the game, trying to decide where to switch, when to do the switch. So that was an issue. I mean, all around. Remind me of your question again.
I'm just curious, like what you might want to share about this game with people who are kind of coming into it for the first time, or just anybody who is revisiting it. Like, people are. I've seen a lot of people online asking for more just information about the background of this game and anything you can share about the production or experience, that you'd be willing to share.
Yeah, I will say, as a producer at that time, the game world was just starting, and even the animation world was just launching. And I and the company gave people a lot of first chances who ended up being rock stars in that world. So, we had an art director named Alex Laurent, who went on to be an art director at ILM and did amazing visual work on multiple films you've seen, Mummy films, all kinds of stuff. You can look him up on Instagram. He's fabulous, Alex Laurent. And then I hired a guy who had not animated at all. He was a painter and a friend of a friend. His name is Richie McBride. He worked in this game for a couple of years. He's been nominated for Academy Award for animation and art direction. He's very good. And then there was another guy we hired. His name was Jay Schuster, and he went on to work at Pixar, and he designed the little robot, the little square robot. I can't remember the name of the movie. A lot of people that worked in this game. Another one named Mark Nonemacher. Again, these were people in technical, like designing cars and very technical drawing and digital work that had an amazing opportunity to let their creativity go. I mean, now we think about it because there's a zillion game companies and a zillion games. But at the time, there weren't that many opportunities for super technical people to also have an opportunity to do very creative stuff. So it did, in fact, merge the Silicon Valley and Hollywood idea and bring a lot of interesting people in, that many of which I stayed in touch with, who did amazing work afterwards. So that's one thing. I just want to nod to Mark Sullivan and Rich Cohen, the original artists, who weren't gamers but provided incredible, and they worked on a lot of films. they provided great art, just letting their minds go. I mean, it's about the game's about creativity in a way, the making of it, as well as I guess Siri creating, worry about what they're going to create. And I'm trying to think what else there is to say. Well, just, for me, it's what the game came out of in terms of the company and how we were really trying to make the company go. And we had been on the cover of Wired and a much renowned start off. And then to have a bunch of games that didn't do very well because the gameplay didn't really hit where it needed to hit. There was a lot of hope around Obsidian changing that for the whole company, which it could not do. And it's hard to know if it was because the steam had gone out of that gameplay because Myst was so successful, although I don't think that was the problem, or we didn't have enough money to promote it because we were at the end of the company. It's not that, I'm not sure I remember that, but there was a lot of hopes around the game and a lot of great people. And it was a big team. There were like 26 of us. Oh, and enough people, we did it in Japanese, we did it in German.
Oh,
so
I didn't know that.
Yes, and in fact, I think a Japanese version is going to be on Steam.
Wow.
So we felt there would be great interest at the time, and we put the money into the translations and other things, and then when it didn't go, it just kind of like, when it's over, it's over. It's like a band. You can spend a year on an album, but frankly, if they put it on the shelf in a store and in 2 weeks it's not flying off, you're in the bargain bin pretty quickly, and you're like, what just happened? I spent a year on that. I'm trying to think of anything else. That's mainly it.
Okay. Well, kind of shifting gears a little bit. Oh, no, I do have another specific I want to ask you about, actually. When you're in the catalog card area of the game and you're pulling out these filing drawers and there's all these different documents with illustrations, there's so many of those.
I know.
I could
a lot.
Are they? Do you remember? Are they all unique assets for every word?
Yes.
Wow.
We spent some time on that. Yeah, those were little details we went into and thought, if someone wants to go through this, let's have something for them to go through.
I mean, yeah, I spent a couple hours just in that area of the game, just taking it in. And I was just shocked because I was going, I'm not seeing any repeats here. These are all so unique. And I was just stunned by the level of detail there. I remember there was a name in the credits. It's escaped me now. But do you remember who did those illustrations and how that part came together?
God, it could have been. No, I kept them. But you should know I kept a lot of that artwork for a long time. Just recently, in the last year, it was like, who cares about it? I mean, it's like a folder. No, I'm imagining it would have had to have been Mark Nonemacher. Probably did a lot of them. And Alex Laurent probably did some. Probably those two did the main ones.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, those are just very cool. So shifting gears now. What can you tell me about your experiences with rocket science? And you mentioned bits of that, but just any insight you can share about that company and what it was like to be there at that time.
Well, at first, for the first while, it was very exciting. It was exciting for almost all of it. First of all, you had a lot. Again, the game industry was just really starting. The video game industry was just starting to launch. So a lot of people were excited to have the opportunity to work on something like this. I will point out that while we were making this game, or while we were starting rocket science, Doom came out. And it was multiplayer on the SGI machines we had at the company, and we were blown away. And late at night, we'd be done at work with 9 o'clock, and at midnight, you'd see 20 of us leave, having played Doom. There was a lot of excitement around where we saw gameplay going, multiplayer and single player. So it was a very exciting time. But going back to, you asked what I do as a producer, the disconnect between the game designers, who's David Fox, very good, Brian Moriarty. Uh, these guys were good game designers. And they were really met with, hey guys, we can't make that much game because it needs to look this good. And they were like, game players actually don't care that much how good it looks. They want great gameplay. And I learned working how true that actually is. But it became, there was some within the company battles around what to focus on and how to satisfy both aspects of what the company said they were going to be. So that was tricky. And then I recall being really, I don't want to use platform names because I'll get them wrong, but just there kept being new platforms, and which to focus on became an issue, which is why Obsidian ended up being a computer game as opposed to a platform game, because we're like, oh man, even if these games are good, we don't know how long Sega CD and Saturn or any of these are going to be around. And it would be like making an album for 8-track, and then a few weeks later, 8-track's out and everybody's playing cassettes. The difference being you can just put music on different formats, but games have to be. I would just say it was an exciting time, but difficult because there was so much attention on the company and the promise of the company and the people they owned, Mike Backus, different people that, and Peter Barrett was one of the people that started the company, and he had invented Cinepack, which was the first compression software for video on the Mac. So between the people involved and the press they generated, the hopes were so high that it became difficult when the gameplay didn't match the expectations.
Yeah. You know, I mean, this is a little bit off topic, but in researching this era of gaming, it seemed like there was a lot of excitement, a lot of great minds. Like a year or so ago, I did a long video on Clive Barker, the filmmaker, and his involvement in the game industry. And you know, he was trying to do these sorts of things where bringing his mind as a director and author into these creative things, but the gameplay wasn't there to meet him halfway necessarily, and so the games never really reached their full potential. And you know, he kind of got out of it before, you know, the technology was kind of hitting a point where that sort of cinematic thing that people were reaching for was able to kind of be met at the same level as the gameplay without compromise. I don't know, it's just frustrating to think about that. But I'm curious, like, what at the time, were you playing games at all? Were you into gaming?
I mean, I got into it at the company, but no, I had been. I came from the video side. They were just starting, and they needed somebody to make promotional videos, help them raise money, and get the word out. And they were hiring or considering hiring outside companies. So a friend of mine, Mark Mullen, who was at ILM at the time, got recruited to hire people. And he knew me, and he called me and said, look, we need the video side, and we can teach you the interactive side. So get in here. So for the first year, I was helping make videos that they used fundraising and promotion, while I was also learning about animation and gameplay. So I ended up playing a lot of games, but in fact, I didn't see it as my job to be great at gameplay. A good producer surrounds themselves with the experts in the various areas that they have to work in, because you've got to pay attention to a lot of things. So I thought, Matt, you're not the judge of the gameplay. And we did a lot of testing. So I learned to trust the testers and my game designers, and people that the company hired that were way into games. So I'm not going to say I was way into gameplay, but I respected the people I had to work with that were.
For the full motion video stuff and all the, you know, the green screen scenes, and were those done like on site there? Like, did you have a production facility at the offices for Rocket Science, or were those done elsewhere?
Well, we did not have a production facility in the side, but with a couple of lights and green, as long as you as long as you have enough room to get your actor off the green and light him well, you can do green screen at home, as we are now finding so many people doing it, even just for their podcasting or their video casting. So we worked with outside, post production facilities that at the time, first of all, we did a lot of stuff in After Effects. I will point out that we were really at the beginning of people seeing the power of After. I mean, I had a background going to rooms where you rented a machine for $700 an hour because you wanted to do some visual effects. And I got to rocket science and I got shown After Effects, and I was like, we can do this here in the office with 20 layers. My mind was blown because I was used to being on a clock that was very expensive if you wanted to do a little animation thing. And so we did a lot of stuff internally. We went to a stage if we needed to shoot a stage. I remember we did a very extensive shoot. We went to Yosemite and researched where we were going to put the Obsidian rock digitally. And we hired a Steadicam operator and brought our actors out there. And we did that all on location. So when they were camping and went outside and saw Obsidian and found the journal, we shot that all out in Yosemite. So yeah, and little things like if we needed a tornado, there was one little thing where we needed a tornado. We went to the Exploratorium here in the city and brought a DV camera and shot a small tornado against green that we just did ourselves, and then it brought it back to the office, extracted the tornado and put it in there. So we did a lot of interesting stuff that went from rent a stage to, guess what, we can do this ourselves now. So it was the very beginning of digital effects that were usually done on very expensive machines, coming to not a laptop, but coming to your home computer. So we were really on the cutting edge of exploring that.
Interesting. So if you can answer this, I'm curious to know, it seemed like for a short time in the mid 90s, there was a lot of focus on the full motion video games and, putting that degree of realism into a game. And that really didn't carry on very much. I mean, now, there are a few games still in that genre that do very well critically, but they're still never huge commercial successes today. I'm curious, like, was that kind of like the hope that's where, I guess what I'm trying to say is what wound up happening was, graphics went toward 3D and, with the PlayStation and N64 and those things, kind of that set the track for the mainstream video game audiences. But was the belief that, rather than going 3D graphics, was it possibly leaning more toward actual video and a integration of, I'm trying to say, less computer graphics? And
yeah, I don't think so, because we saw the rise of the power of the machines to do the animation, or just kept growing. And then you had motion capture. So we get two people to sword fight for an hour, put markers on them. This is for a different project I worked on that was not at Rocket Science. And then take that motion and apply it to digital cameras. I actually think rather than going to shooting more live actors, it was going more in the direction of, oh, this is very pliable and changeable in the digital realm. And it's just, we see the power of machines and the cost of storage and the power of the chips has never stopped, basically. So I think it's moved away because now we can just make synthetic imagery that almost looks real. And you don't have to pay for the actors. You don't have to reshoot. You don't have to worry, did they wear the same clothes? Have they changed their, none of that. So, yeah.
For the conductor character in the game, was that someone doing motion capture, or was that just animated, from a, do you know about? Yeah
that was just animated.
Okay.
By very skilled animators.
Yeah, it looks it looks great. I'm excited for people to experience the game again, because it is, there's just such stunning imagery. I play a lot of older adventure games and PC games and full motion video games especially, and sometimes the charm in them is that they're, it's like a B movie kind of charm. They're hokey but then every once in a while you play a game where there's just just raw creativity on display, and you're you can suspend your disbelief a lot better when
Yes,
I'm trying to say Obsidian's a very damn good game,
yes,
basically.
yes.
Uh,
No, I cannot tell you the frustration of how it went commercially, because we all felt the same way. And the feedback we got from people that played the game was like, this is fantastic. And then some reviews came out and they loved it. Not every single one, but I think almost all of them.
no, I mean
And
I read a lot of the contemporary reviews, overwhelmingly positive. Yeah.
yes, and not only overwhelmingly positive, but they noted the stuff that we spent time on. Like they got it. And so it was very frustrating to just be sort of the last attempt for a failing company to try and succeed. And also, honestly, by that time, metaphorically speaking, a lot of people had one foot out the door because they saw that the company wasn't going to succeed on based on this one game. And it had already been around for like 3 years. So some of us were sort of like believing in it and clinging to it and watching it launch and waiting for something to happen, while other people at different levels of the company were like, I need to move along. It was tough.
Are there any other things you want to share about rocket science, like any other projects you were involved with, or were you involved in other games there directly, or?
Yeah, I worked on my first game was Lodestar, The Legend of Tully Bodine. Uh, I think the concept for that came from another great artist we had at the company, Ron Cobb, who recently passed away, who designed the bomb. I mean, he worked on a lot of films and with James Cameron and different things. Very respected guy. I think he came up with the idea for the game, and we shot that. We did a fair amount of full motion video shooting of our actor in the pod in the ship he's in. But that was the first. Actually, I will say immediately we had the misconnect that I've already mentioned 2 or 3 times between the game designers just watching their game get whittled down. Artists were very excited to make it, and I felt very caught in the crosstalk trying to be respectful to game designers who knew what they were talking about, and respectful to artists that had worked on very exciting films and they knew what they were talking about. And I'm in the middle going like, all right, how are we going to do this? And you've got a budget and schedule, then you've got a deadline. So it was a tough time that showed a lot of promise, almost, for the first couple of years. And I almost wish, well, first of all, it served me in terms of now I work in animation, and it was great for me to learn all of that. But you almost wish the company had been birthed 2 or 3 years later, because we would have been able to take advantage of the talent in house more fully, with a greater understanding of where we needed to, maybe not make it look so good and extend the gameplay, and when different tricks we would have learned that we just, frankly, we were on the cutting edge there and didn't know it. But in the jockey between look and gameplay, you know, even E3 came out while we were doing. I mean, it was an exciting time. I'll just say it was an exciting time and a disappointing experience at the end. It felt good to walk away knowing we'd made a great game. And I'm very happy now that I don't know if it's going to be 5 people or 50,000 people. I have no idea who's going to even notice this. Thanks for doing this. I don't know who even finds out this is out there, but I hope a lot of people have a chance to experience it, because it's worth the time.
I totally agree. All right, well, that's pretty much all I had for you today.
Yeah, if anything occurs to you, I mean, I'm here. If you thought of something else, or I don't know if you will, or if reach out. Let's see how it does.
Yeah. Okay. Cool. I really appreciate you taking the time to talk with me. It's just I'm a big fan of the game. It's very cool to just learn more about how things get done. Basically,
Yes, it's tricky.
it seems so.
Tricky thing. All right, man. Have a great day.
All right. Take care.
Bye.